Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. There's a new convention in town, and it's sure to be mega fun without the mega expense. Comics, toys, collectibles, pop culture. ShadowCon, Saturday, February 1st, 2025 in Orlando, Florida. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
They got rid of the Tuesday intro.
Yes, they did. It's gone.
All right, so welcome back to the show. This is, in fact, the Silverline Show Tuesday. The automatic intro was set for Geekman, which is a different show that you should definitely check out on Eastern Time, and the Silverline Show is for the Sunday show. So we're still figuring things out. I'm sure we'll get our normal intro back by next week. So thank you all for hanging out with the weird little hookups. We're, in fact, none of those people. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by David Rios.
Hello.
And Ron Fortier.
Hi, all. And what? We lose Jose in one of the other groups?
Yes. Jose is currently dealing with some family stuff, so he'll be back with us next week, hopefully. But we do have some housekeeping to get into before tonight's show. I've been talking about my own thing all this week, this month really. So I'm going to start off actually with another campaign that just went live. This one is Ron's for Hamlet's End, issue number 1. We have a trailer here. However, due to my browser setup, it doesn't pull the audio through when I play trailers. So Ron, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hamlet's End?
All right, glad to. In fact, we're going to do that. Yeah, we got to get into the mood, you know, put the old cowboy hat on and do our thing, right? Hamlet Ends a 5-issue miniseries done by yours truly, written by yours truly, and illustrated by a Cooper School graduate named Zane DeGain, who happens to be one of my neighbors here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And both of us have been wanting to do a Western comic for a long time. So this thing came about while I was at the Wicked West Comic Expo in Loveland, Colorado, a couple of years ago. I did a panel and basically on creating a new comic project, and I got my audience involved and asked them, what kind of project would they like me to tackle next, and what genre, those kind of things. And overwhelmingly, I think it's indicative of what we're seeing across all media, that Westerns are making a comeback in film, streaming, and TV and cinema. And so that was it. The audience wanted us to do a Western comic. And from that came this thing called Hamlet's End. Hamlet's End, the title of the series, is basically the name of an outlaw camp hidden in the Arizona Badlands. And as the book opens up, a gang called the Early Hollis Gang raids a farm, kills the husband and wife that are running it. Unbeknownst to them, they have a 13-year-old daughter who's out hunting. And hearing the gunshot, she runs home to find her parents dead. Buries them, goes into the local town, begging the sheriff to go after the gang, but the sheriff won't do it. It's out of his jurisdiction. Actually, the guy's afraid to go up against this bloodthirsty gang. And so Dallas Maddox, our protagonist, decides that she's going to take this on herself and proceeds to, ride off by herself to go after this gang, right? 13-year-old young girl. The kicker is, by the end of the first issue, which is what, we've launched now with the Kickstarter, she comes across one of the most well-known gunfighters of that era in the Wild West. And I'm not going to give that away. We'll leave that to the end of issue number 1. But it becomes the beginning of her tutelage in gun handling, tracking, hunting, all that kind of stuff. So that as the series goes along, she matures, she gets older, and eventually tracks down the Hollis gang and all the things that happen in between. So, hopefully we're going to put a lot of action and adventure in this. That's the basic theme. We'll deal with some characterization, obviously, and just have fun with the whole Western genre and motif. I've always liked it. I think it peers down what I think is the philosophy of the American civilization, i.e. individualism, rugged individualism, straight shooters, if you will, those kind of things. And so Kickstarter's up for another 38 days, I believe. We've got a goal, the money goal set. If folks go to the site, they will see that. If we make beyond that, then we will have a full color issue. So keep my fingers crossed. People will check it out. As Tim alluded, there is a video that Zane and I put together. He did. He basically edited, cobbled this thing together, added music, and did a quite professional job with it. I'm really, really happy with it. So that's pretty much Hamlet's End. It's going to be around for another 37 days now. And, the same old spiel, I guess, is, we'd appreciate anything you can do to help us out. And, if you can't, then spread the word. Share the link with other people. That would mean a whole lot to us.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah. And I guess if you can get him to send that video file or send me the video file, Ron, for Release Forward, I can actually run that in the actual StreamYard thing so you can get audio on it.
Well, I can get you that video is on YouTube. I'll send you the link after the show tonight.
Okay, yeah, I can run a download on that. Okay. And time for my thing. You've already heard it. You're going to hear it for at least another week. Wolf Hunter number 2 is also available on Fund My Comic. We are 74% of the way funded, 7 days left to go. So if you want to go ahead and get yourself a pre-order of the second issue in my World War II alternate history spy story, you can go ahead and do that at fundmycomic.com/wolfhunter2. It follows a secret history in which German spies have started a technological war with British counterintelligence on England. So we follow a injured and kind of mentally shaken group captain James Willard as he gets recruited by Winston Churchill to a secret group known as the Ministry, or Churchill's secret army, to hunt down the German spy who has stolen a prototype. And as I've said before, in our promotional material, we have shown you the body, we have shown you the theft. It's your job to figure out where the lie is. Because in here there is a lie, and you won't find out until the third issue. And thank you, Rory, for shouting out Wolf Hunter. And like I said before, this is there's a lot of emotional honesty, I feel like, in the comic, from the writing all the way down to the colors. The kind of everyone is on the same page for how the storytelling was going to be driven. So if you like some artistic or experimental colors in your comics, it's definitely also a pickup just for that, just to see Martin's work. I believe our original arts have been picked up. Oh, we still have original art from Tommy, so if you want to go ahead and get yourself some original art by Tommy, you can also do that. And I believe if you do that, you'd actually get us, if not past our goal, just about up to it. So if you want to get yourself some original Tommy Flormonte inks, I definitely recommend you do so, because you only got 7 days left to grab them. And I'll be talking about it again on our last day next week.
And I'm sure he'll sign them at one of the conventions.
Oh, yeah, Tommy will sign anything. You could bring Tommy Dean Zachary's pencils and he'll sign them. There we go. Okay. Well, that has been our housekeeping. We'll get into tonight's topic, which is how to find success in comics. And this is going to be, of course, we got to keep it educational, but also honest, in that if you're going into comics, you have to figure out what your definition of success is, because it's not going to look the same as anyone else, and it's probably going to be a lot different than if you went to screenwriting. But two little things I wanted to talk about before we get into it. I've promoted my own work, and I've been promoting Ron's work, but I feel like I have to promote something that's on Netflix, because it is the most absurd thing I have seen in a long time. If you're a fan of the sport of golf, but if you want to see golf not played like it's supposed to be played at all, with insane superpowers and weird emotional whiplash and scene changes, there's a cartoon on Netflix called Rising Impact. It follows a 10-year-old boy who discovers he has a secret talent for golf, with a special ability called Rising Impact that allows him to drive over 300 yards at the age of 10. It's fantastic. Glenn Fleming. Book looks great. Great to see the placement. Yes. Thank you. We did a lot of historical research on being authentic to London at the time. So we used the actual train route from London to... wow, I forgot the name of the city. There's a bombing there. I wanted to call it Swansea, but it's definitely not Swansea. The problem is I've been looking at all the details of this book for so long that it's now like the details are starting to look fake and not real to me. So they're burning out of my brain. But yes, we used the correct British service pistol. We used the correct model train. The timeline matches up with actual events in the Blitz. And it's following an actual British story of Henry Bowen, and his failure to keep his hands on the magnetron during his train ride. And we just added some spice to it. A lot of the work and stuff was also done by one of our other Brits, Pete, who did stuff on issue number 1. So I try to be accurate as well to the types of people who would be here and what kind of things would cause them to lie on a story like this. There's a lot of different people living in England at the time. Some of them refugees, some of them displaced nobles, some of them are factory workers. All of them have past regrets, all of them have secrets, and all of them have a reason to lie to strangers on a train. So it's up to this RAF group captain to determine which one is the most devious liar in the room. Absolutely. So if you spot something you don't like, let me know. But we tried to keep it as accurate to the different type of people, the timeline, the details. I take pride in that we're a World War II British comic or British war comic that actually uses the Hawker Hurricane and not the Spitfire, because the Spitfire is pretty much at the tail end of the war. It looked cool, but the Hawker Hurricane was the workhorse. Anyway, about my stuff. Watch Rising Impact if you like golf. It's absurd. It's hilarious. It's a fun time. Other thing. Do you guys, if anyone is not already aware, there's some fun stuff happening in space right now. We have a planetary alignment kind of all this last weekend and this week. So if it is past your bedtime, or if you're up late and you want to look out something cool, if you go outside and just like stand in your front yard, you should be able to see 5 to 7 planets depending on the time, just with your naked eye. So that's cool.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
Right now in the Western Hemisphere, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn are all visible. Yeah. Okay. So getting into tonight's topic, which is how to find success in comics. And like I said before, success is something you need to define for yourself, because that's how you can set your own goals, but also it helps you develop a healthy relationship with comics, because as you know, comics will break your heart, but only if you let it. That's the secret, is you have to understand why you're getting into this art form. If you're trying to become the next Alan Moore or Donny Cates or Kirby, great long-term goal. Understand that's a 1 in a million shot, but if you want to take it, I will support you all the way. But realistically, you should get into comics to find some sort of personal fulfillment or personal joy in it, whether that's because you love the art form, you have something you want to say with the art form, anything like that. I have my own definition of what success is, how I've already found it, and where I'm going to go from here. But before I get into that, I figured we'll salute where salutes are due, and our seasoned member of the team, Ron. Having been in comics for just a couple months more than I have,
Right. Sure.
How did you define when you came into comics? What was kind of your goal with it? And over the years, how has your idea of success shifted or morphed?
You know, it has changed. Just wow.
Started off easy.
Well, yeah, you know, when I first got into it, I was maybe 21, 22. Got home from Vietnam and got back into comic collecting in you know, a big way again. I put it on hold for 3 years while I was in the Army, and I just love comics. I was a comic fan. I was a comic fanatic, and it's always been one of my dreams to work in the industry, to get published. All right. And I think if we're going to start talking about, you know, how do you find success, I go what you say, Tim. I think it's an individual thing. Each of us has to define that, what it means to us individually, right? And I can remember those early years, like 21, 22 to 23, when I actually finally had something published, was basically working in fan publications and writing scripts or interviewing professionals by mail, correspondence, or whatever. The internet wasn't there. And it was just a case of collecting amateur comic books and seeing what other people were doing and trying to write scripts. And my one goal at that time was just to get published, just to say I wrote a comic script that somebody illustrated and somebody else published. And believe it or not, the first thing I ever had done was like an 8-page story for a little Canadian outfit. A couple guys, fans in Canada, were doing these mini comics. I mean, these little square jobs, all right? And they were selling them for like 25 cents a piece or whatever. You know, get a couple of them for 50 cents. And through the buyer's guide, the old, you know, magazine for comic collectors, that's how I first discovered this whole idea of fan publications. And I started buying some of these little mini comics, started corresponding with these two guys, both of whom were, artists in training. Their goal was to become professional graphic illustrators, which they subsequently went on to do. And I can remember one of them had created this little superhero character of his own, which I liked, and ended up writing a little 8-page script and mailed it off to him and said, "Hey guys, I said, if you like this, I said, it's yours. I enjoy what you're doing with your fanzine." They read the script, they enjoyed it, and they got back to me and said, "Yeah, this is fine. We're going to draw this. This will be in another, issue coming out in another month or so." And I can remember getting that little manila envelope and opening it up, and there was my story, illustrated by, I believe Art Cooper was the artist who did it. And it was a fanzine. It was a fan publication. But it was such a rush for me to see that I could do this, that I could actually write a script that could be followed by a graphic artist, could understand my direction, dialogue, all that, the basic fundamentals. And it was like on-the-job training, all right? So you keep doing this for the fan publications, all the while looking towards breaking into the pros, which is, what most people want to do when you start off with. And for me, at that time, there were quite a few outfits. The main outfits were always Marvel and DC. But even then, even in the 60s, you had Eclipse, you had First Comics later on in the 70s and 80s. So you had other comic companies, the B companies. And one of the most popular at that time was Charlton Comics out of Derby, Connecticut. And Charlton had been around for a while, and they came up with this showcase program specifically geared to new creators. And they literally put out this idea that if you sent them some material, right, a camera-ready strip, and they were looking at like 8 pages, and they decided to publish it in what they called the Charlton Bullseye, all right? They wouldn't pay you in cash, but they would pay you in 50 copies of the comic. So at that particular time, by then, like I said, working almost 3 years in fan publications, I'd started networking. And I made friends with a couple of graphic artists, young graphic artists wanting to break into the business. And one of them was Gary Cato from Honolulu, Hawaii. And so Gary and I both saw this, this presentation from Charlton. We called each other, decided we'd work together on a project. I wrote an 11-page science fiction thing called Duel in the Stars, very Star Wars, themed kind of concept, long before Star Wars even came out. And Gary illustrated it beautifully, mailed it off to Charlton. Bill Pearson was the assistant editor. He enjoyed it so much, they didn't even have to touch it up. Gary had done his homework. He was very prepared for this moment, this opportunity for us. And so the only thing Charlton had to do was color the script. And in the 3rd issue of Charlton Bullseye, out came Duel in the Stars by Ron Fortier and Gary Cato, which appeared in, comic shops across the country. It caught the interest of Tony Isabella, who at that time owned a comic shop in Cleveland, Ohio. Tony read it and liked it a lot. And later, when we did a second story for Charlton, Tony was so taken with our work that he contacted Don Thompson of the Buyer's Guide. And lo and behold, one day we get a copy of the Buyer's Guide, and there's Don Thompson talking about me, yours truly, and Gary Cato, and basically saying we're 2 of the newbies in the business and a team to look out for. I mean, I was blown away. I mean, by then I married, starting a family. I was working at a local factory where I lived in New Hampshire. And this is basically a hobby at that time to see if, I could ultimately break into the business and make it work. And so it was like, yeah, okay, I'm there. I made it. And I'm now, a professional comic book writer. And shortly after that, I sold a short story to Eclipse Comics out of the West Coast. And Eclipse sent me a check for $35. And so now I'd actually earn money doing this, okay? And it just goes on, leading up to the Green Hornet, the Terminator, the stuff for Now Comics, and a bunch of other things. I don't think I ever so much sat back and said, I mean, there was a point where I said, okay, I've done it. I've realized this dream. But it was always a case of it's never the end. You do it, but then if you've got that passion for storytelling, it's okay, that's fine to this point. But as I think you guys will both agree, ultimately, I think comic creating is an addiction all of its own, because once it gets into your system, you're not going to stop. All right. You're not going to, one day wake up one morning, Tim, and say, well, I guess I've written all the stories I want to write. I'm not going to write anymore now. I'm, probably going to, put on my slippers and watch golf on television. What the heck? Okay. It's like, no, you just keep going and going after it. Now, here's the thing. I've done this for, like as we know, professionally, almost 50 years. I've achieved a lot of the things I wanted to achieve. I'm more than satisfied with that. All right. I mean, honestly, blessed with it. All right. And if it came to an end tomorrow, for whatever reason, there is no way I could be disappointed. All right. I've got this body of work that's out there. What I've learned, though, and here we go. We're going to go back to the definition of success, okay, is that I never really got a real serious gig at either Marvel or DC. Okay, I don't ever consider myself in the top tier of the great creators. Like, you mentioned Alan Moore earlier. There are people like Denny O'Neil, Mike Barr, all my heroes, all right? Writer heroes that I looked at, that I tried to study, and when I read their comics for fun, but also was trying to realize how they did it, how they went about it, all right? So it was never a case to me of a popularity contest. It was just a case of, was my stuff good? Was I writing good comics? Were people enjoying them? And if you stay in the business long enough and you mature in it and you start doing convention after convention, people start coming to you. And that's where I think the biggest prize, the biggest payoff comes, all right? And that's having fans who bought your early work, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, and are coming to your table with those comics. And the stories that I've been told over the years about what my stories have done for these people. And I mean, give you a couple. I mean, I've had several people come up to me and say they got into writing because of my comics. All right. One guy writes video games now. All right. He just loved, the imagination of my stories. I've had several people, and maybe a sign of our times, who've told me that it was my stories that kept them going through hard times. I now have a personal friend whose parents are going through a divorce when he was about 11 years old. And it was one of the darkest periods in his life. And at that time, my Green Hornet comics were being published by Now Comics. And he tells me, and it's so bloody humbling, all right, that was one of the few, every month that issue would come out, and it was one of the few little moments in his life that wasn't dark and depressing, that those stories somehow or other gave him a little respite from, what was happening with his family and helped him get through it. Okay, so honestly, there isn't any money in the world that could compare with the idea that I entertain people and then maybe I helped a lot of people in some very dark hours.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you, Glenn, for chiming in the chat. Drew his first comic when he was 12, 22 pages, full color, staples and all. Took him several weeks. And his brother ripped it apart. Don't know about comics, brother will break your heart. Yes, siblings can be brutal. And also he said, Ron, you should draw a few scenarios from your service in D-Day. He wrote and illustrated his dad's D-Day story. You should draw a few scenarios from your service in Vietnam. Glenn had wrote and illustrated a few parts from his dad's VA story. So I don't know if you ever thought about taking some of your Vietnam stories and writing them down in script or using that to inspire some of your other work.
The story oddly enough, the story I sold to Eclipse, that first, story I sold for $35, actually was a Vietnam story. It actually took place there. And it was based on an incident I'd heard about while I was there, and I incorporated it into a story as is. But the thing with Vietnam, my experiences, again, some of that stuff I don't dwell on a whole lot, and the kicker is, it was so long ago now. I was just telling a friend just the other day that when I sit down and even try to remember that year, bits and pieces I recall, clearly enough. Others don't. I tend to dwell on the craziness of it. I mean, because war is crazy. It is really crazy. I mean, if you catch anything from any film you'll ever see made about, Vietnam or any other war, all right, it's the sheer insanity of where people are at. Things like Catch-22 and whatever. You know what I'm saying? But that's what would end up being in anything I put down or wrote about. Not so much, firefights or conflicts or whatever, but the human stories of the guys that I met, the guys that I served with, and some of the experiences that I took home with me that never left me. I mean, I can tell you right now, you do a year there, and then your time comes for you to go home, and there's a thing called being a short time. You've got like about 2 weeks left before you leave in country, and part of that 2 weeks is you're off duty, so you're not on any kind of assignment whatsoever, and it's just days for you to clear base. And that's to go around to various places and get things signed by various quartermasters, sergeants, and whatever. Basically, it's all paperwork, and that's it. You're ready to go. And they take you down to Saigon, where the Air Force was bringing in, civilian planes, huge giant planes to take us home. And so you get there, and, I got there alone. I didn't go with a unit. I went by myself from San Francisco in a plane with 200 other GIs that I didn't know. We got in country and we all got dispersed to whatever units we were going to be assigned to. It was the same way coming home. So here we are lined up. This plane lands, doors open up, and out come another 200 fresh recruits. And they're marched off by us. And of course, like I said, the black humor, we're all calling out to them and, watch out, Kyle, you're getting better at, aiming, this and that ridiculous, stupid stuff. But we just can't wait to get on that bloody plane. All right.
Yeah.
On the plane, taxi off, in the air you go, and you're flying home. I fell asleep. I mean, I think within 30 minutes of being in the air, I fell asleep. And I actually dreamt that I was back in country. Just like that. Closed my eyes, and I was back in country. And it was like the whole idea of going home was the dream. And I was just so shaken by it, right? That obviously enough so that the next thing you know, I have this hand on my shoulder shaking me. And I open my eyes up and I look at this stewardess, right? I think we were like, TWA or whatever. And the stewardess looks down at me and says, "It's okay. It's okay. You're on your way home." And man, trust me, I never wanted to have that dream again. As long as I live, Yeah. So yeah, maybe someday, I don't know. We'll see.
I think it's good that you kind of wrap like how like the things I feel like it's true for a lot of people. I feel like is that if you are able to compartmentalize the things that stick with you are just the dudes being crazy and doing weird stuff. For me, I think the greatest Vietnam story I've read, I haven't seen the movie yet, is the book The Greatest Beer Run Ever. It's based on the true story of a guy by the name of Chicky Donahue. who had gotten out of the service before the war kicked off, but he wanted to do something for his buddies. So he sneaks into Vietnam on a merchant marine ship with a bunch of beers.
Oh,
And his plan is to get back to the fire base where his buddies are posted and give them a round of beers. And of course, all the army guys that see him do this or run into him are all for this because they love it. They think it's the funniest thing. And all the officers saying, like, this guy's got to be some sort of CIA spook because he's in Vietnam in a T-shirt carrying a pack of beer. So it's just and it's a story that actually happened. It's just this guy who, kind of by sheer luck and people being kind of gallous about the whole situation, managed to bring some beers to some soldiers in Vietnam.
Oh, crazy stuff. Crazy. I mean, really, really crazy stuff. Yep.
Okay. David, having been in comics, having worked for Marvel, and being able to color on one of the biggest titles kind of in comics, as well as working on the indies. For you, what was your goal going into comics, and how do you define your version of success, and how has that kind of shifted throughout your career?
Well, my original goal was just to get in and have fun and do something that I enjoyed. That I got pretty lucky that I was, when I was originally doing inking and stuff, that I got in, I was able to do some independent stuff, and that was fun. Being able to say, hey, there's my work. My name's right there on the thing. And it was kind of a unique thing because for me, it was almost like it was a two-step process. I was doing, I did a couple of books that, a couple of side stories, like four-page stories, stuff like that, doing inking. And then ultimately, when I got into the coloring part, it was a completely separate thing. It was a lot of trying. So initially, it was with the inking stuff was kind of I was doing the stuff locally and kind of almost fell into it. And I have to say some of the props, and one of the things that was really nice was I got to work with Mark Panicia, who's doing a lot of he's at Marvel doing a lot of the X-Book stuff currently. But it was great. And he understood, he knew that fresh face, not stuff like that. So it was great. When it came to the coloring, it was a lot more work. A lot of going and buying equipment, a lot of practice, a lot of get out there and keep trying, get your stuff there, talk, keep the conversations going, things like that. It did help that I was working in an area, I was in the area around the Malibu offices and stuff. So I had people that I knew. I was working in a comic store, so I had people that I talked to. I also knew Dave Ulbrich from earlier and stuff. So I not necessarily hired from Dave's point of view, but it helped being in the area and working to know people and deal. We had kind of an ambassador thing where people would come into the store and do from Malibu and stuff. So they had like a retail program and stuff. So getting to know those people. But a lot of hard. There were cases where it's like, okay, well, we're not hiring. we're not hiring right now, and go and I actually went to Texas for 6 months and came back because they were hiring again and all that stuff. It's just a lot of work. I sent a lot of stuff out. I have those rejection letters from Marvel, DC. The main Dark Horse. I believe I have one from Dark Horse too. But just a lot of trying and keeping those communications going and all that. And I got the Mike Giles was the one who hired me, and his words were, you have contacted, emailed, called every single day. And it was a lot of a lot of that, and he said, I'm going to have to give you a job then. So that's what kind of broke me into, but it was a lot of determination, and it was a lot of hard work, and I was very green when I got in, and I was able to work with some of the people there. I did a lot. Everybody had their own styles and things and their own pages, so I got more of a mentorship type thing of well, this maybe you might want to try this, but most of the stuff was a lot of me just playing around with it and learning and developing my own style. But there was a lot of helpful input. I met a lot of great people there. We went on to do different things. Go on to like Top Cow. Some of the people went into Warner Brothers and Batman Animated. Some people went to Disney and all that stuff. So there's a lot of talented people. I in hindsight, I see that there was a lot of people that were a lot more skilled than I was. I was very green when I came in, but I loved it. We had a basically a program of you can make as much as you want. You can color, 1 page a day. You can color, 10 pages a day if you want. You basically set your style, your salary and how much you want to do it. And that it was very relaxed, and it was one of those things where I was there all day, and I enjoyed doing it. And I enjoyed just the whole fun of making comics. Back then, you didn't get, if you were a penciler, you were an inker, yeah, your name's up there. When you were a colorist, you were put into a team, basically. So it was either a team of, primarily was, colored by Malibu Graphics. That's as much as you got in there. But sometimes you would get things where you could get, maybe it may define it to a smaller team, or there's some stuff with it. But it was a lot of fun being able to do the books that I enjoyed. I got a whole range from, a lot of characters, Hulk, Hulk. We didn't do, other than the covers that I did for X-Men, we usually didn't do X-Men. We did a lot of Spider-Man. We did a lot of those on the Marvel side. I got to do a lot of the Ultraverse pages, coloring and stuff for that. So it's kind of a switch back and forth depending on what book is. We've talked before, sometimes you get a couple pages in, and then because the way they're divvied out, you're on to your next book. So, but with the stuff now with Silverline, in that it's like, if you're doing a cover, you're doing a cover, and you get credit, for doing that. But it's also a lot more of, here's the book, and you're doing the whole book. You're deciding, more of the coloring and stuff like that. A lot of when we were doing stuff for Malibu, there were a lot of color guides and things that, were provided. Every editor had their own thing, kind of similar to Tim. Your stylized vision that you have on Wolf Hunter, and that you and Martin have worked out. That's a preference. That's a style and everything that you did. So we would run into certain editors on certain books had some things at the time. Thor and Hulk books, they wanted something very basic. They wanted Hulk to be green. They wanted a flat green. They didn't want a whole lot of rendering on them. So you could do a lot of quick pages, and you just tailored to whatever the editor had wanted. When it came to Spider-Man and the old Ultraverse books, they wanted highly detailed, a lot of cuts, a lot of contrast and things. So learned a lot on how to deal with. I wasn't dealing a lot directly with the editors, but because we had a team captain that was kind of the interface. But you got a lot of feedback, and you got either reworks or some things they liked. Maybe you created textures or you did something and they liked that. Sometimes they wanted you to duplicate that in other areas of the book, but yeah, it was going through. And honestly, when I was there, I was a young kid, and I wasn't there to make money. I was there to make comics, and I would spend a lot more time on a book trying to make it something that I felt good about, and I detailed, and that was the drive for me. It wasn't about money. I could have made a lot more money had I just been there to do pages and put out as many pages as possible. There were some people there that would do an entire book in a week themselves, and they had skills to do it. I couldn't work that fast, and I couldn't, with my level of work, I wouldn't be happy with that. So.
Right.
I mean, I'm listening to you talk, and I think eventually you have to come to a place where you love the media. All right, you really, really love it, and you have fun working in it. All right. I mean, looking back in my career, the one job that I was paid the most money for was the year I did Gene Roddenberry's Lost Universe with Techno Comic. But that thing was a pain because the editor that I worked with was a great guy, but there was so much control from the publishers that every single script we put out eventually would get changed. So we would be trying to plan out a series and a storyline of 1 or 2 issues, and we'd turn in a script and they'd change it on us. So which forced us to sit back, and the next storyline had to match what the publishers had changed. And they would change that. Well, it got to the point where we were just realizing these publishers couldn't keep their hands out of the creative process. All right. And that whole year to me was a joke, because whatever we ended up producing supposedly satisfied them. All right. And I made a ton of money, but I would never go back and take another job like that again. Never. It zapped the fun of making comics, of being creative and working with other people for a common goal. And so to me now, where I'm at with my life is basically the idea of I do this because it's fun, and we'll continue to do it. Right? The day comes when I'm not having fun writing comics, I'll stop.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, end the story. Really.
Absolutely. I think it is such a personal thing. A lot of it comes down to just find your own enjoyment of it. I've said this before, but my idea of finding success, or I knew when I would have accomplished my first goal, was when I had a comic or book in a school, and it helped some kid have a better afternoon than they've been having. Like, were they able to have 30 minutes of a good time? And that's already kind of happening because I now know that Wolf Hunter's in a few like school libraries, and I've gotten a few stories of kids reading it. So I know that's been used to teach too, which has been interesting. So that's probably kind of been the high one, right? Is knowing that I set out, I did what I set out to do, which is make sure that some kid has like a good 30 minutes in their day. Coming from, I don't believe that every good creator needs to have some sort of trauma in their life, but Ron talked about Vietnam. I had like not the best childhood growing up, not the best home life, but I had the X-Men. So I know how important a good story can be for a kid who's going through it. So that's something I want to do. And kind of now we're going for that. My goal is to just keep on doing it as long as I'm having fun with it. Just keep on finding ways to provide fun and compelling ways to let someone have a fun time. Let them have some escapism, but also if it causes them to think about something or be more aware of something, that's just a cherry on top. But I do also have some selfish goals in there too, which I think it's always good to have a little bit of ambition, right? I mentioned the X-Men before, and working with a big publisher sounds terrible, especially with how they treat their staple series now, and that it's just going from one crossover to the next. So I'd like to get to a point where I forgot his name, but the current writer of X-Force, how that book came about. They actually got approached by an editor at Marvel, who said, "All right, we just finished this big thing. Forge is available as a character. We're going to give you can pick some of their free characters. Here's where we're going in 2 years. Tell me, how do we get there?" And so he has creative freedom for that 2 years to write out this complete story that he wants to do with this character that he likes. And so my kind of big long-term goal would be to get to a point where I receive a similar approach, where I'm not forced to like write like someone like some editors like issue by issue B, but actually give the freedom to work within the universe. But just because X-Men has been such a staple of my life that I would like to contribute part of my creative ether to the legacy, right? I want to give back to that. So I get to say that, my name is part of this legacy and that I gave what I had taken so much from. Also, it'd just be cool to, take my niece or my nephew to a comic shop and then pull a book off the rack and flop it down in front of them and they can see my name. I think that'd just be fun. But again, the thing comes down to it's still that same idea of just giving someone a better time, whether that's making a kid be excited because their uncle's name is on a book, or now contributing to a book series or a legacy that I've had so much joy from, right? And so, like Ron said, it comes down to just finding the joy in comics and having that be the driving force again and again. And I mean, it even gets to a point where even if you do have a weekend where you think I'm not going to write or whatever, and you do go golfing and you tee off, and as you look out in the horizon, try to see your ball lands, you pull your driver back, and you think, no, I should come a page later. I need to come a page later, and then
there you go, right?
Yeah.
But life becomes just this amazing adventure, especially in the comic book field. All right, if you open yourself up to it, all right, and if you go with the flow, you just basically take one job, after the next, and do the best you can at it. All right. It's pretty amazing some of the things that will open up for you, that will become available for you, some of the experiences you will have. All right. Again, like I said earlier, look, I'm not, definitely taking, a big piece of humble pie here, because I think I have a realistic appreciation of what my place is in the history of American comics. All right,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna have 2 footnotes, guys. I know that already. All right. The first one is that I wrote the script for the first ever Alex Ross comic book.
Yeah.
That's a done deal. Nobody's ever going to take that away from me. It's a little footnote, okay? I mean, 25, 30 years from now, they'll be doing the Alex Ross movie biography, right? And maybe somebody will get to play me turning in the script. I don't know. The other thing is having the opportunity to invent Popeye's mother.
Yeah.
Okay, because long after I'm gone, Popeye's still going to be around. All right, and that whole mythos is still going to be going. Great guns, but somewhere out there, there are people now who are logging into the fact that Roxanne Crusher is Popeye's mother. It's become part of the mythos.
Mm-hmm.
Ta-da! It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm happy with that. All right, it's just like, all right, it's just like fame and fortune. Okay. I wrote comics. I had a great time writing comics, and I'm still having a great time writing comics.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from Alex, I mean, I've worked with Jeff Bullock, Ron Randall, and I'm forgetting people I've worked with, some of the best people in the business. All right, Paul Pelletier, and the list goes on. All right, and every time it was a treat. All right, it was a rush to work with some of these talented artists. All right, and see what they can do. And I'm having that feeling right now with everybody I'm working with right now on the multiple projects I'm working right now. Cesar Feliciano on Gin and Tonic. All right, Jesse Thomas on Crimson Nut. Zane Nagane on Hamlet's End. All right, I tease my wife, but she says it all the time. They're gonna find you lying on that desk one day in the middle of a script. I said most likely it'll be a good way to go out.
Right. Yeah, I think also just keeping a sense of like appreciation on Wanderlust for what's the opportunities you're afforded, even if you don't necessarily, even if it doesn't feel big and won't understand that you're still contributing to something that is part of the zeitgeist, right? Where by working on a comic, any comic, even if it's not the biggest, you've put something into the world that did not exist before you started working on it.
Right.
And appreciate the people you work with it. Like, I with my partner, I constantly nerd out about the fact that I host a show with a colorist who colored issues, covers of X-Men issues that I read, and I read some of your Green Hornet. So it's like, yeah, this is fantastic. I get to work with Rob Davis on Dracula, and that's fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah, and this is all kind of stuff that came because I, on a whim, decided to go to a different school. And then when one of my teachers reached out, I said, yeah, sure, why not? I'll send in some scripts. And so it's that moment of appreciation of understanding that you're going to get a lot of opportunities thrown at you and take as much as you can give, and always appreciate where you are and what you're doing.
You have a dream, make it come true. I'm listening to both of you, especially with Dave, talked about earlier about working real hard. When I was just on the cusp of breaking out of the fan publications, I had the opportunity to meet Joe Staten. Nice. And Joe had just broken into the pros by a year or two. He was working for Charlton and doing several comics for Charlton Comics. And I got to meet him face to face. And I was like one of his first ever fans. And so, I think typical, the one question I asked him was, so what advice would you give people, about breaking into the business? And Joe just looked at me and laughed, and he says, it's probably the easiest advice you could ever give anybody in anything, and that's don't quit. Mm-hmm. All right? Because that's what it's all about. If you don't quit, you'll get rejections. Everybody does. You'll get rejection slips or whatever, all right? But you just keep at it, and you just keep at it, all right? The people who didn't make it are those who quit.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that. So, I mean, if some of our friends and new creators are watching, this episode tonight, that's our advice to all of you, all right? If you have a dream, then work at it and keep working at it. Don't stop working at it, all right? Make it come true. And once you've done that, just keep doing it.
Yeah. I can't remember if it's Steve Vai or there's another guitarist. But before we get into our end of show housekeeping, and just hit on that same note, the way they talked about to be successful in anything creative is you have to be obsessed with it enough to reach escape velocity. Yeah.
Pretty much. That's it.
That's what it comes down to. All right, this has been that Silverline show on Tuesday. We have 2 books currently available for pre-order or Kickstarter, or however you want to phrase it. We have Wolf Hunter #2 on fundmycomic.com/wolfhunter2. We have Hamlet's End #1 on Kickstarter. Their URLs are a little more annoying, but if you go to Kickstarter, type in Hamlet's End, it's right there. All right. We have been That's Our Show on Tuesday. Thanks for hanging out, Glenn. And thanks for checking in, Ojo. Like I said, if you're listening to this after the fact and want to join in the chat live like Glenn has tonight, head on over to youtube.com/SilverlineComics or Twitch, Facebook, what have you, or the Madness Comics Network, and join in the show live. If you're listening to any podcast service around the world, please leave a review and share it with a friend or loved one. We know that most of you listen after the fact, and we appreciate you doing so. We will be back next week with a topic on a calendar that I should probably start keeping in front of me, but I never do.
It'll be a surprise.
It might be a surprise. Let's see. Next Tuesday is going to be the last days for pre-orders. So doing our end of show special. I don't know what we'll do. We might do something weird. We'll get weird with it, but it's going to be our end of Kickstarter, end of crowdfunding party. We'll get
All
weird.
right.
Yeah, if you want to listen to Martin, the colorist from Wolf Hunter, talk about War Comics, he'll be on the Wednesday show tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about War Comics and coloring Wolf Hunter and all that good stuff. So make sure to get your orders placed for Hamlet's End and Wolf Hunter. We'll be back next week. But until that time,
Make mine.
Silverline.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.